Hey story lovers. If you're into mystery, suspense, and unexpected twists, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe, relax, and let's dive into today's story. Damian Volkov, a name synonymous with power, success, and luxury, stood at the altar with an air of quiet confidence. As the CEO of one of the largest tech companies in the world, he had everything that money could buy: a sprawling mansion in the heart of Manhattan, a fleet of luxury cars, and a business empire that reached every corner of the globe. But today, on his wedding day, the thing that mattered most to him stood by his side: Selena Durant. Selena, a woman of elegance and grace, was every bit the perfect match for him. Their wedding was the talk of the town, attended by the who's who of the elite. The lavish ceremony, held in a grand cathedral, was everything they had dreamed of. It was the culmination of years of love, trust, and shared ambitions. The guests marveled at Selena's beauty in her bespoke wedding gown, and Damian couldn't help but smile, knowing that the life he had worked so hard for was finally coming full circle. But as the reception moved into its final hours, something shifted. Selena's smile began to fade, and a strange unease settled in her eyes. Damian, absorbed in the joy of the moment, didn't notice it at first. It wasn't until the night had worn on, and the guests had begun to leave, that he realized his bride was gone. He found her standing alone by the grand staircase, her back turned to him. There was a coldness in the air between them, something unspoken. Without a word, she turned to him and whispered, "I can't do this. I'm sorry, Damian." Before he could process her words, she was gone, disappearing into the night, leaving Damian standing in the silence of a wedding that was never meant to be. The wedding night that was supposed to mark the beginning of their forever had turned into a nightmare. Selena had left him. In the days that followed, Damian's world shattered. How could she just leave? They had built their entire future together. He scoured the city, tried contacting her friends, and even went to her family's estate. No one knew where she had gone. It was as if Selena Durant had vanished from existence. His thoughts spiraled. What had gone wrong? Had he pushed her too hard in the pursuit of perfection? Was it something he had done? The confusion gnawed at him. Damian was a man who was accustomed to getting what he wanted. But this was different. This wasn't business or a negotiation. This was his heart, his life, his future. He found himself in her favorite cafe, sitting alone at a table, drowning in the same coffee they had shared countless times. He had been blinded by success, too focused on his empire, never fully understanding her silent struggles. But now, everything had come crashing down, and he was left with nothing but questions. Days turned to weeks, and weeks turned to months. Damian poured himself into his work, a distraction that kept him from facing the painful truth. Every night, he'd look out over the city skyline, wondering where Selena was, and why she had left him without a trace. 5 years had passed. Damian had become a global force, a name that was now synonymous with success. His company had expanded into new territories, acquired groundbreaking tech firms, and had changed the landscape of the industry. But despite all of his accomplishments, there was always an emptiness. Selena's absence haunted him, and nothing, not wealth, not accolades, could fill the void. The Damian Volkov everyone saw was a businessman with the world at his feet, but behind closed doors, he was still the man who had lost the woman he loved. His friends tried to set him up with women, but no one compared to Selena. No one understood him like she did. He built his empire on the foundation of success, but at night, when the lights of the city twinkled below, his thoughts were with her. Was she happy? Had she found love? Was she thinking of him? Though he was known as the millionaire CEO, deep inside, Damian was still the man who once promised to love Selena forever. But as time went on, he realized that his success came at a high price. He had lost the one thing that truly mattered. It was a day like any other when the call came. Damian had just finished a meeting with his executives when his assistant rushed into his office. "Mr. Volkov, you have a visitor," she said. To his surprise, standing in the doorway was none other than Selena Durant. It felt like the earth shifted beneath him, and for a moment, time stood still. She hadn't aged a day. The same beauty, the same poise, it was as if no time had passed. Her eyes met his, and for a brief moment, the familiar warmth he once felt for her returned. But it was quickly replaced by confusion. Why was she here now, after all this time? Selena stepped into his office, her expression unreadable. "I need to talk," she said, her voice tinged with emotion. Damian was speechless. This was the moment he had longed for, but it felt different now. He had moved on in ways he never thought possible, but Selena's presence stirred feelings he thought were buried. "I'm sorry, Damian. I was wrong," she began, her eyes welling with tears. "But I had no choice. My family, they forced me into leaving. I didn't want to, but I had to. I was scared of losing everything, of losing them." Selina's confession hit Damien like a punch to the gut. All this time, he had blamed himself, never knowing that the reason for her leaving wasn't because of their love, but because of a family that had held her hostage. Her parents had threatened to destroy her career, her life, if she went through with the marriage. They had leverage, connections, and power. And Selina, trapped between the love she had for Damien and her obligation to her family, had made the painful decision to walk away. "I thought if I stayed, I'd lose everything," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I was so scared, Damien. I didn't know what else to do." Damien stood there in stunned silence. He had never known the truth, never understood why she had left him that night. But now, everything was clear. His heart ached with the realization that the love of his life had been torn from him not by choice, but by circumstances beyond her control. The truth changed everything. For the first time in 5 years, Damien saw Selina for who she truly was, a woman who had been forced to make the hardest decision of her life. He had spent years harboring resentment and anger, but now, it was clear that he had never stopped loving her. "Selina," he said softly, his voice cracking with emotion. "I spent so long hating you for what happened, but I never understood why you did it. I never knew you were just as trapped as I was." She nodded, her hand reaching out for his. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to leave you." Damien took her hand, pulling her closer. The years apart had changed them both, but the love they had shared was still there, deep in their hearts. The world they had built apart seemed like a distant memory, and all that mattered now was the love that had never died. "I don't care about the past anymore," Damien whispered. "I care about you. I always have. And I want us to start over." Selina smiled, the first real smile he had seen from her in years. "You still want me?" "Always," he said, his voice full of conviction. "Nothing else matters." As they stood there, in the quiet of his office, the past melted away. In that moment, all that remained was love, a love that had survived time, distance, and heartbreak. And for the first time in years, Damien Volkov felt complete again.